if you want to support the show, any of the shows, either this or whichever show, I'm not on right now because this is just a blanket ad for all of them, and the website, you can go to bewareofspoilers.com. In the description for any of the episodes of Beware of Spoilers, there is the option to donate. If you don't want to donate that way, you can donate directly through the website. We do have that, mwpnews.com. And if you don't want to support that way, then going to mwpnews.com will help out because we have ads there. We don't want to keep it, where there's a lot of ads. There's a few ads. But the point is we want to make it so that way, we can sustain this for the long term. If people donate, we're never going to paywall anything, I don't think, as of right now. But if people, start donating, we'll start doing cooler and cooler stuff. Like donations are how we get to cover stuff like Tribeca and other, film festivals. And, we may be able to bring on more people to help out. So if you want to help out the show and you want more content from us, by all means, even just going and giving us a 5-star rating on Spotify helps out a lot. But that's it. That's the only ad we'll have on the podcast ever. But here's whatever podcast you're going to be listening to. Good evening and welcome to Beware of Spoilers. I am Adam. Let's address the elephant in the room, which you can probably figure out based on the title of this episode. We shifted the schedule. Why? Because the 4:30 movie was only playing pretty far from me, and not at AMC. It was. I think it might only be playing at Regal because the only places that I saw it playing were Regal cinemas. But regardless, it was a little bit of a trek for me to get to go see this movie. So I decided to put this as the Saturday movie. Unfortunately, that meant bumping Transformers. We're going to do that Wednesday instead. But beside that, here we are. And I think the thing with this movie, now having seen it, I saw the trailer when it came out around Comic-Con a few months ago. And I don't want to say I was disappointed because I don't think I had many expectations going into it. I mean, he talked a pretty big game about this movie before it came out, saying like, oh, we're going to aim to get it into Sundance and this is going to be a big one, it'll be one of his best. And I'll say it's one of his better, more recent movies. I think it's definitely better than, say, what's the one I'm looking for here? I can definitely say without lying, this movie is better than Reboot. I think it's better than what's that other one that was pretty good? It's better than Yoga Hosers, which was not good at all. And I probably would say I enjoyed it more than Tusk. I don't think it's as rewatchable as Tusk, but I think I enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed Tusk. That said, I don't think it's great. And I think Clerks 3 is still the post Red State era, or let's say post Cop Out era Kevin Smith. I think it's my favorite of those movies. It's still Clerks 3. This movie is, if you've listened to Smodcast, which I have, so I'm a big fan. Like you'll recognize a lot of little things. I didn't think the 24 Karat Case of Love thing would be the giant, like, would be the emotional payoff of the movie, and I think that does kind of work. I'd be interested to know if it works as well for people who are unfamiliar with what that joke is going into it. And I think you do get a good sense of, like, this is as the podcast was, they call it the emo Kev era. It was him, as a kid trying to find himself and all of that, and that's kind of what this is. This movie is definitely a vehicle for the parody bits, where they're doing parody movies. There's like 3 of them. They're marginally funny. There's definitely lower budget than some of his past ones, because you don't quite have as many gratuitous cameos. And I think that it's probably better for that. But I don't know. I don't know how that all, like, you know, I think that whether or not you like this movie is going to fundamentally come down to how well you buy the three leads, which are Brian, who is definitely not Kevin Smith. It's definitely not him. And then you have the other two who are Belly, and I forget the other guy. Oh, hang on. His name, the real guy's name is Ernie. His name's Bernie. That's what it is. Okay, so those are the three leads of the movie. And if you can gel with them, I think you're good. If you can't, you're in for a rough watch. And I think that's kind of where you're going to end up standing on this. The girl, Melody, has clearly not enough screen time to really be a major factor. I think that's kind of one of the things I was thinking about as I was watching this movie. I'm like, man, he's really regressed a little bit when it comes to writing female characters, because there are two major female characters in this movie, and we'll get into it in a little bit, what I think their role kind of is going forward, and where I think this kind of goes, because I do think there's more to explore. Both the female characters kind of are designed to give Brian the agency to do whatever he kind of, wants. And in this case, it is pursue that career in writing. And at the end of the movie, let's just get to the spoiler part. At the end of the movie, it ends with him sitting there with Melody, and then his two friends come over, and they're talking very intentionally double entendre about where it sounds like she's trying to goad him into fucking, and then he's like, oh, no, I don't know, I'm not ready for this yet, and it's like, no, it's fine, I'll help you, I've done this before, and it's filling out a job application is what they're doing, and the job application is at Quick Stop, and it's one of those things where it's like, I'm watching this and I'm like, number one, why can't this just been Dante from the beginning, and just had Austin Zager play Dante, like very young Dante? That would have been fine, I think. But I think that Dante is too divergent from Kevin Smith as a character compared to what it is, because like that's the whole mythology with Clerks, is that he kind of wrote himself in to the movie as kind of a mix of both Dante and Randall. So like this character is profoundly him in one person in a way that Clerks is not. It's him split in two, and the two of them playing off each other, and with mixes of like Brian Johnson and other people who influenced him at the time. And that is kind of like, this movie feels like he's trying to recant Clerks a little bit, but not quite as good, or not nearly as good is probably the best way to put it. And I think that the issue is you end up with Genesis Rodriguez and I forgot and Melody being these characters who are designed to be like, it's okay, take time to find yourself, and then that's going to be it. Which, all right, fine, that's good. But if we're not going to explore that further, it's kind of a weird arc for these characters. And I'm not entirely sure why that is. And then it's like you hear like, and I think that there's room to improve, and I think that there is, and I hate to say this because I feel like I'm kind of unintentionally willing it into existence, but there is room for a trilogy here that culminates in Brian making a version of Clerks, which at that point we're so down the meta rabbit hole, because then we just saw Clerks 3, and that's kind of that already. So how do you differentiate the two? I think with this you could strike a slightly more serious tone, especially since Clerks 3 is like, yeah, the making the movie is the vehicle for some of the comedy, but at the end of the day, I think the issue with that becomes, if you do it again, how do you do it again without it just being this kind of meta clusterfuck of a movie? Like, you get what I'm saying, where it's like, if you do it a second time, it's just like we've covered this ground already. We've seen him do a movie about him making Clerks. Do we now do that a second time? Or, I mean, and this is probably, no, you can't even do that, because I think Mallrats, you need that more just specific kind of, what's it called? You need the specificity of being involved with Clerks to have that happen. Like, it's weird, unless they do a time skip, which would, and look, I think this is coming down the line. I don't think that the story kind of ends here. I think that they do too much to, like, I think setting it up with this character who's like, you want to be a director, you know, and I feel like this is something where it's like he was influenced by the Fabelmans. I feel like we're going to get to that point. And I think that the way they do that is they kind of just like, they change it where it's like, maybe it is he just go, like, I think, I'm trying to think through what I've heard on Smodcast to be like, how do you kind of do this in a way that you don't end up being like a contrivance by just doing Clerks 3 again. Like, that's kind of the thing, because I would be interested to see these characters again. I want to see Melody more fleshed out. I think that she's interesting, and I think that, like, giving her some agency besides just the object that is, you know, that Brian pines for would be better for her, especially considering she's functioning in that emotional support role in kind of the same way that Genesis Rodriguez's character is, who I don't think we ever got her name. But she's the concessions, or the ticket, you know, the ticket seller at the movie theater, who he's chilling outside, and he talks to her, and she's like, I want to make movies. And there was someone in real life that was kind of like that, where it was like, oh, I'm going to, you know, I want to be a director, and articulated that for the first time to him as a career option. There is a lot that could kind of be done in further exploration. And I think, like, that was one of the things where it's like, I went into this kind of down on it to begin with, because I did not I did not think Blockchain was funny. And for me, that whole thing in Clerks 3, everything having to do with both, what the fuck is that kid? Trevor and Blockchain just completely fell flat for me the entire time. So going into it, like, I don't know, now it's that kid and he's going to be the lead here, and it's like, I don't know if I need that. But after a certain point, he started growing on me. And like the same thing with, wow, that is a fucking bumper sticker right there. And I think the thing is, when I watch this movie now, I kind of feel like there's room for them to do something more here, and not just be like, okay, well, we're. And I think the specificity of Quick Stop at the end is kind of what throws me, because I'm like, oh, so we are kind of getting to this point where, you know, he does have to, he is going to go and work a Quick Stop now, because that is the next step for Kevin, but even so, it's not, because they skip a pretty big part, which is, you know, all the time at the rec center. But it is what it is. Like, I'm not here to criticize his choices on how he wants to, you know, dramatize his own life, but I think that that's kind of this weird place where they're kind of putting themselves. And that's the thing too, is that it's like, I feel like it's just easier for him to consolidate, 'cause, again, I'm going off of like secondhand whatever I remember from listening to, well, I did listen through Smodcast like last year, or no, 3 years ago. Wow, 3 years ago at this point, because it was 2021. Because he put the he put it all behind his club. So I listened through the whole thing, and I'm like, oh wow, so that's, you know, that's a thing. And I remember him talking about working at a deli before he went to. Either way, it is what it is. But like, I think there is room for exploration here of this character. And the thing is, I see here in this movie, like, the issue with a self-directed biopic is kind of the idea of, you need to fundamentally reckon with what you did at the time. You can't just be like, oh, well, I'm going to do this and everything's great and everyone around me kind of impacts. And that's kind of like, a lot of the protagonists in a lot of these movies are kind of passive and kind of, you know, oh, woe is, like, not, oh, woe is me, that's the wrong way, but like, they're kind of not the active participant in their story to the point that they're like, other people are acting on them and causing them to move. That is Dante's entire thing, is that he doesn't move. He fundamentally just kind of stays the same person over the course of the 3 movies. Like, that is who Dante is. He is an object that doesn't really change. Everyone changes around him, and everything around him changes, but he's fundamentally the same person at the beginning of Clerks as he is at the end of Clerks 3. Which is why you get to the end of Clerks 3 and he's having that fight with Randall, and it's like, oh, we've done this already. Like, and that's, and that's why it kind of works. And that's, I do hope if he revisits this, and I do think there's a chance he will. I mean, I don't want to say it was hard to get tickets, because that would be inaccurate. I would say it was not the easiest thing to get tickets with me sitting a comfortable distance away from people. I'll put it that way. I don't like sitting directly on top of people, so if I see a theater where it's kind of full, I'll wait for another screening. And that's kind of where this was. So I'm like, I think the movie's going to do fine at the box office. I think, like, the budget couldn't have been more than, like, $3 million. So, if that's the case, I don't exactly know what happens there. Like, I think it can make that back. And I think the thing is, too, that we don't take into consideration is that when we look at the box office numbers at the end of this, which people are going to dissect it, and that's the thing, but when we look at the final tally for the box office, what we're going to be thinking about with this movie is, what about the tour? Because he tours all these movies, and that's going to make them back the money, so it doesn't matter. If he wants to make another one, he'll do that. Either way, we know the next one's a new Jay and Silent Bob movie, so get ready for that. But yeah, I'm very, like, I'm more up on this movie than I thought I was going to be. And I think part of it is the runtime, and because you don't really get that great of a chance in this movie to really get to know the characters, I don't think. And everyone is kind of like one-dimensional. It's like you have, Brian, who's here because he wants to date Melody. You have, Bernie, who's here. He's the guy who's good with women, and he really wants to, like, he just, he's just there to be the source of conflict. You have Ken Jeong, who's, the external conflict from outside the group, who's the theater manager. He's great. I loved him in this movie. He was so funny, playing this asshole theater manager. And that's really great for him. And I think he did a great job with that. And then you have, like, Melody, who doesn't really do much in the movie besides eventually give him the okay to, like, he's the first person he articulates to that he wants to be a writer, and then that's going to be the inciting, like, it feels like the inciting incident for a movie, but it happens in the third act, which is just a little bit disjointed, I think. And then what was the other big one? And the other kid, Belly, who's just kind of there and doesn't really have a ton to do. I'm not entirely sure what his role is in the movie. He's just kind of there. It's kind of like, and the other one. There are a few scenes that are just a little too long, and the thing is, too, it's like, as you watch it and you realize the movie is an hour and 20 minutes long, you're kind of just like, or an hour 24, I think, you're kind of like, oh, so they needed to keep this in to keep the runtime, like, up. Otherwise, it would have been hard to. I mean, but I feel like if you just cut it down to to around an hour, you would have been just fine. I think it's just a theatrical. Was not expecting 24 Karat Case of Love to be made into a song, and that was something that made me laugh. I think that this is a movie that. I think I'm talking myself up on it more as I talk about it, because I think that, like, a lot of his worst instincts were kind of kept in check for a lot of it, because it wasn't the gratuitous Cameo City that reboot was, and that, and that what's it called was, and that the other one, Clerks 3 were. Like, it's not that. Like, that said, I don't think the emotional resolution of this movie hits as hard as the emotional resolution of Clerks 3. Like, the end of that movie being the death of Dante is going to be hard to top, and I think that just comes from having time to sit with the character and know the character, and then to see him kind of, have that ending in the theater where he's sitting there and watching the movie, like that is still probably, like, that's why it made my honorable mentions in 2022. That's why that movie was my honorable mention. This probably won't make the list. And I mean, look, I'm not saying I would not watch a sequel, because I'm going to show up next time regardless. I just think that it would be a tougher sell, I think would be the right way to put it. I think it would be a much harder sell to get people on board with a sequel to this. I would watch, and I think that's kind of a testament to what this movie is. This feels like a pilot episode, and I think that's the best way to put it. This feels like a pilot episode for a TV show that I'd be like, all right, I'll give this another episode, and let's see how this goes from here. That's what this felt like a lot of. And truth be told, if you cut out a good amount of, if you cut out all of the stuff, like, the bit with the nun, that's his daughter, if you cut out the thing with the fake, all the fake trailers and all the bits with the fake movie, you probably could have gotten this in under an hour and had it kind of work. And that would have been, I think, just as, that would have, and I think that would have been probably a better product, actually, if we're being honest. Because, that's the thing, is that it's like, if you're trying to deal with these characters' conflict, or the simmering conflict, because that's kind of, I think, my biggest issue with the whole thing with the fake movie with the guy and the beavers, and it's like, my biggest issue with that is every time you cut away the Diedrich Bader and Logic talking, it's in the middle of this conflict that's brewing between Bernie and Brian. And it just kind of stalls the way it is for you, the viewer. And it's just kind of like, okay, so we gotta take a minute, step back, we're gonna watch this, then we're gonna cut back to them fighting, and then you have to reset each time that happens. And I think that's kind of not something that I'm overly thrilled about. But yeah, I mean, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it enough that I don't think this is a complete waste of my time to drive all the way, 45 minutes each way to go see this movie. And I would recommend watching it. I don't know how long it's going to be in a theater, because it is it's a limited, it's a limited release. It's a Saban. Saban does the distribution. They don't keep them in theaters long. Usually they're just Fathom events. Like, Clerks 3 was a Fathom event. This is actually a multi-day thing where they're playing it for a few days. Like, this is a bigger difference. But either way, we'll wrap up there for today. Check out the 4:30 movie, and I hope to see more from this. Like, I know I sound like I was down on a lot of it, but like I said, this feels like a very good pilot, where I would like to see, and one of the things that I've said, and we'll give this we'll give this a little caveat, where it's like, one of the things I've said before is that I would watch, and I definitely said it on something, because I was talking to Peter about it on content at some point, and I said I would watch a show that's like The Goldbergs, but it's his life. Like, and I think that would be that'd be a great sitcom, I think. From the way it's laid out with, from the way he lays out the stories with Scott and with, the others on there, I would watch that show. And this feels like kind of a pilot episode for that. That's kind of, like, Rachel Dratch does a great job playing his mom. She's fantastic. And one of the things I got while I was watching, I'm like, she feels kind of like Beverly Goldberg. Overbearing and calling the theater and just, you didn't wait for me to say I love you back. What if I dropped dead? What would happen? Like, and what if you got hit by a bus on the way home on your bike? He's like, are you mad that I possibly got hit by a bus in your fantasy, or are you mad that I didn't think about you loving me before I got hit by the bus? Like, that whole thing feels, a lot of the things in this show kind of feel like they could have been. And the thing is, too, it's like, this movie's rated R. I feel like there's enough room to cut down where this could have been a PG-13. Like I said, this could have been this is a very strong kind of pilot for, like, here are these characters, you will get to know them over the course of a few years, and I would watch that show. Or I will, and you know what, whenever he revisits this, which, I mean, could happen in the future, I would revisit that. And hopefully this is not just a lengthy way to soft reboot Clerks, which is entirely a possibility, where this is just a roundabout way to do a soft reboot of Clerks. And I'm sure that someone, I think it's Saban, but I think Lionsgate's kind of his partner now, for a lot of his movies. And this isn't a knock on him, but Lionsgate apparently just fucking release anything. Because, like, The Crow was them. What was the other one this year that was shitty? Borderlands was them. Borderlands was terrible. Oh my god. But, like, those were both him, Lionsgate. But then Lionsgate also does that really shitty-looking Christmas pageant movie where I'm like, oh my god. Like, do you guys have an executive who can say no? Like, you know that's an option, right? You don't have to release every movie that comes into your studio. Like, you can pass. You don't have to distribute. You don't have to say yes to everything. And if you do have to say yes to everything, feel free to call me. I got stuff to pitch to you. But either way, the point is, like, the issue I have, like, if that's going to be the case, I think Lionsgate would be like, oh, if we're going to get around to him remaking Clerks, and that's where this is kind of a, like I said, a circuitous route to get to that, then I could see that being a potential moneymaker. I mean, this year's the 10th anniversary of Clerks' release, so maybe for or not the 10th, wow, 30th, because it came out the year I was born. But if that's the case, I could see 35th being, being the, the Clerks reboot, or a version of Clerks with these characters, which would be interesting, I think. Especially if we're given the chance to let these characters kind of expand and not just be cardboard cutouts. I think that if it's just going to be the exact same thing, I don't think it's necessarily worth it. But I'll say this, I am going to rewatch The Batman tonight so I can record an episode about that for 30-minute reviews, but if I didn't have to do that, and I may end up doing it by the end of this, I may end up doing it by the end of this, by the end of this week, I'll probably end up rewatching Clerks after watching this, because it does kind of feel that same way, but it's just a little off. But that's as much as I'm going to say on the matter. Go check out the 4:30 movie, especially considering we're now at almost a third of the runtime of the movie, just talking about it. It's entertaining enough. You can wait for it to hit streaming if that's more your forte, because I'm fairly certain this will be on PVOD relatively soon. But look, I mean, I think that this is him kind of riding off of Clerks 3 and being like, okay, I'm going to do something that's kind of in that same vein. And I hope we get more of this. I hope we get back to see these characters again, because that'd be really cool. But we'll wrap up there for today. Our next episode about a movie will be Transformers on Wednesday, Transformers 1. And then I think Saturday night, we're going to be doing Superman, the Christopher Reeve story. Super/Man, the Christopher Reeve story. And I was going to skip that until it hit HBO Max and skip the Fathom event, but then I saw the trailer fairly recently, and I was like, fuck, I gotta see that. That looks really good. So we have that coming, and then by the end of the month, we also have our first DC movie of the year, or the only other DC movie of the year. I guess it doesn't really count as DC Studios, but Superman does. Super/Man does. This is Joker is going to be by the end of September, and The Wild Robot. Oh, and let's real quick go over what we're planning for Hamptons and New York Film Festival, because both of those are rapidly approaching in October. So a lot of the movies I wanted to see at New York Film Festival are also playing at Hamptons, including several that I didn't necessarily want to see, or including several that I wanted to see that weren't playing at New York Film Festival. So we're definitely going to be doing Homegrown, which is a documentary about that culminates in January 6th. So we're going to be doing that. That's, I think, the first Saturday in October. The following week, we will definitely be doing one of the following, if not both. We will definitely be doing either Conclave, the upcoming Ralph Fiennes movie about them selecting the new pope, or Blitz, the upcoming Steve McQueen movie. Steve McQueen movie? Yeah. That feels wrong. Whatever. The upcoming movie with Saoirse Ronan about the Blitz during World War II. Yeah, it is Steve McQueen. I don't know why that always feels wrong. Steve McQueen there was also an actor, Steve McQueen. But either way, those will be what we're looking at doing. If you want to donate to the Cool Things budget, which will increase our ability to do these things, you can use the link in the description. That money goes into paying us and allowing me and Josie to do cool things. Josie may be going out to a film festival up in New England. Me and her are still trying to iron out details and if she wants to do that, because it's a bit of a drive for her, but we're trying to work out, because that is a Academy Award qualifying festival and they have some cool stuff happening there. But she might be doing that. We will talk about it and we will let you know. But we're definitely, that is my plan for Hamptons. We're going to skip New York because Blitz was on the list, but I'll wait 3 days and then just see Blitz at Hamptons, and then Conclave is a definite, because that one I've been hearing about since very early in the year. But we'll wrap up there for today. Our next episode will be Wednesday, unless we do a streaming thing. Until then, have a great rest of your week.